The sun blazed mercilessly over the endless expanse of dried grass, turning the western plains into a sea of gold and rust. Sarah McKenna pulled her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders despite the heat, her blue eyes scanning the horizon where red rock formations jutted against the cloudless sky like ancient sentinels. The wagon train had been moving steadily for 3 days now, heading toward the promise of new settlements near the Colorado River. 6 months had passed since Thomas died, 6 months since that terrible night when bandits attacked their small homestead, leaving her a widow at 23. The other families in the wagon train treated her with a mixture of pity and wariness. A young woman traveling alone was an oddity, a burden, perhaps even bad luck. But Sarah had nowhere else to go. Her sister in California was her only remaining family, and the scorched earth behind her held nothing but graves and bitter memories. "Mrs. McKenna," called out Jacob Morrison, the wagon master, riding up alongside her rickety wagon. His weathered face showed concern beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "We'll be stopping at Devil's Creek for water in about 2 hours. You managing all right?" Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, Mr. Morrison. Thank you for asking." He lingered a moment, as if wanting to say more, then tipped his hat and rode ahead. Sarah knew what he wasn't saying. They were entering Apache territory. The very thought sent a shiver down her spine despite the oppressive heat. Stories of raids and kidnappings had circulated through the wagon train like wildfire, growing more terrifying with each telling. The landscape began to change as they moved deeper into the territory. Saguaro cacti stood like giant guardians, their arms reaching toward the unforgiving sky. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and something else, something wild and dangerous that made the oxen nervous. Sarah's horse, a gentle mare named Buttercup, whinnied softly and tossed her head. It happened just as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The attack came swift and brutal, not Apache, as everyone had feared, but white bandits who knew the wagon train's route. Gunshots cracked through the air like lightning. Women screamed. Men shouted orders that were lost in the chaos. "Circle the wagons!" Morrison's voice boomed. But it was too late. The bandits had chosen their moment perfectly, attacking when the train was stretched thin along a narrow pass. Sarah watched in horror as the lead wagon burst into flames. She grabbed Thomas's old rifle, her hands shaking as she tried to remember how to load it. A bandit on horseback charged toward her wagon, his face obscured by a dirty bandana. She raised the rifle, pulled the trigger. Nothing, she'd forgotten to cock it. The bandit's laugh was cut short as an arrow whistled through the air, striking his shoulder. He tumbled from his horse with a cry of pain. Sarah looked around wildly, trying to understand what was happening. Through the dust and smoke, she saw them, Apache warriors, attacking the bandits from the rocky outcroppings above. In the confusion, no one could tell friend from foe. The Morrison family's wagon overturned. Sarah saw little Emma Morrison crawling out from beneath it, blood streaming down her face. Without thinking, Sarah jumped from her wagon and ran toward the child. "Stay down!" she heard someone shout, but she couldn't stop. She scooped Emma into her arms just as another bandit rode toward them. This time, she had no weapon, no defense. She closed her eyes, shielding the child with her body. The impact never came. When she opened her eyes, the bandit lay on the ground, a tomahawk embedded in his back. An Apache warrior stood over him, retrieving his weapon with practiced efficiency. For a moment, their eyes met. His were dark as midnight, fierce yet somehow sad. Then he was gone, disappearing back into the battle. The attack ended as suddenly as it had begun. The surviving bandits fled into the desert, pursued by several Apache warriors. The wagon train was in ruins. Of the 12 families that had started the journey, only 7 wagons remained intact. Mr. Morrison was dead, along with 6 other men and 2 women. The Apache had vanished like smoke, leaving behind only questions and fear. Young Ben Morrison, barely 16, took charge. "We need to move, now, before they come back." "But the wounded," Sarah began. "We take who we can. Leave the rest." His voice was hard, aged beyond his years by the violence he'd just witnessed. Sarah helped load the wounded into the remaining wagons. She'd given Emma back to what remained of her family, but the child's blood still stained her dress. As the decimated wagon train prepared to move, Sarah realized with growing dread that her wagon was among those destroyed. Her horse was gone, probably stolen by the fleeing bandits. Everything she owned, her few precious belongings, Thomas's letters, her mother's Bible, all gone. "You'll have to ride with the Johnsons," Ben told her curtly. "There's no room anywhere else." But when she approached the Johnson wagon, Mrs. Johnson shook her head. "I'm sorry, Sarah. We're already overloaded. Perhaps the Millers." The Millers said the same, as did the Blackwoods. Sarah understood. She was bad luck now, touched by violence twice over. No one wanted her near their families. "I'll walk," she said quietly, lifting her chin with what dignity she could muster. As the wagons rolled away, Sarah trudged behind them, her boots already filling with sand. The sun was setting now, painting the desert in shades of blood and fire. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, refusing to think about what would happen when darkness fell. An hour passed, then two. The distance between her and the wagon train grew larger. Her throat burned with thirst. Her feet bled inside her boots, when she stumbled and fell, skinning her palms on the rocky ground. She knew she couldn't get up again. The wagons were just specks in the distance now, disappearing into the purple twilight. That's when the sandstorm hit. It came roaring out of the north like a living thing, a wall of dust and fury that blotted out the stars. Sarah curled into a ball, pulling her shawl over her face, trying to breathe through the fabric. The wind howled like 1,000 demons, pelting her with sand and small rocks. She thought of Thomas, wondered if she'd see him soon. Perhaps it wasn't such a bad way to die, swallowed by the desert, becoming part of this vast and terrible landscape. Through the roar of the storm, she heard horses. Her heart seized with terror. The bandits had returned. She tried to burrow deeper into the sand, to become invisible, but strong hands grabbed her shoulders. Lifting her, she fought weakly, her strength nearly gone. A voice spoke words she didn't understand. Apache. Terror gave her a final burst of energy, and she struck out blindly. Her fist connected with a solid muscle, earning her nothing but a grunt. The hands didn't release her. The warrior, for she could see now that's what he was, lifted her onto his horse as easily as if she weighed nothing. Through the swirling sand, she glimpsed his face. It was the same man from the battle, the one who had saved her and Emma. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd thought, perhaps 30, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to look right through her. He spoke again in Apache, then switched to broken English. "Storm bad. You die. Come." She had no choice. She was too weak to resist, too tired to feel proper fear. He pulled her against his chest, wrapping a blanket around both of them. His body was warm, solid, smelling of leather and sage, as he guided his horse through the storm with supernatural skill. Sarah found herself relaxing against him despite everything she'd been taught about his people. The storm raged on, but within the shelter of his arms, she felt strangely safe. Her eyes grew heavy. The rhythm of the horse's movement and the steady beat of the warrior's heart against her back lulled her towards sleep. Somewhere in her fading consciousness, she heard him speaking, not to her, but to the horse, or perhaps to the spirits that were said to guide his people. His voice was deep, melodious, nothing like the war cries in the stories. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was almost gentle, as darkness claimed her. Sarah McKenna, proper Christian widow, slept against his Apache chest, unaware that this moment of unconscious trust would change everything. The storm continued its assault on the desert, erasing wagon tracks and footprints alike, as if the universe itself conspired to separate her from the world she'd known. The warrior guided his horse toward the hidden canyon where his people camped, the woman in his arms growing heavier with sleep. He'd watched the wagon train for days, had seen how they treated her. When the bandits attacked, he'd led his warriors to drive them off, not for the wagon train's sake, But because those bandits had been terrorizing Apache families too, saving her had been impulse. Nothing more, or so he told himself. But now, with her sleeping trustingly against him, her golden hair spilling over his arm like sunlight, he wondered if the spirits had other plans. The storm began to die as they neared the camp, and stars emerged one by one, bearing witness to this unlikely pair, the Apache warrior and the White Widow, bound together by violence and storm, riding toward a destiny neither could imagine. The first sensation Sarah felt was warmth, not the scorching heat of the desert sun, but something gentler, like being wrapped in her mother's quilts back home in Missouri. She stirred slightly, her body protesting with a dozen different aches. Memory came flooding back. The attack, the storm, the Apache warrior. Her eyes flew open. She was lying on soft furs inside what appeared to be a wickiup, its domed structure made of bent saplings and covered with brush and hides. Pale morning light filtered through the entrance, along with unfamiliar sounds. Voices speaking in Apache, children laughing, dogs barking. The normalcy of it all seemed impossibly strange. Sarah sat up quickly, too quickly. Her head spun and she had to catch herself against the packed earth floor. She was still wearing her dress, though someone had removed her boots and placed them neatly beside her. A clay pot of water sat nearby, along with what looked like dried meat on a wooden plate. The entrance flap moved aside, and an elderly Apache woman entered. Her face was deeply lined, her gray hair worn in 2 long braids decorated with beads. She studied Sarah with sharp, intelligent eyes, then spoke in heavily accented English. "You wake. Good. Drink." She gestured to the water pot. Sarah's throat was so parched she didn't hesitate. The water was cool and sweet, better than anything she'd tasted in weeks. "Thank you," she whispered. The old woman nodded. "I am Sage Mother. You are in camp of Chief Naichi. My nephew bring you from Storm." "Your nephew?" Sarah's mind raced. The warrior who'd saved her was related to this woman? Before Sage Mother could answer, a commotion erupted outside. Voices rose in what sounded like an argument. Through the wickiup's opening, Sarah could see people gathering, men, women, and children forming a loose circle. Her rescuer stood in the center, his face stoic as an older man with an elaborately decorated chest plate spoke rapidly in Apache. "What's happening?" Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. Sage Mother's expression grew troubled. "Black Crow says you must go. Says white woman brings soldiers, brings death." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But something else, old law." The argument outside intensified. Sarah saw her rescuer gesture toward the wickiup where she sheltered. Several women in the crowd shook their heads, while others nodded. An ancient-looking man with a staff stepped forward, his voice cutting through the debate with unmistakable authority. Sage Mother drew in a sharp breath. "Ah, so that is how it is." "What? What is it?" Sarah grabbed the woman's arm without thinking, then quickly released it. "Please tell me what's happening." "Last night, you sleep against my nephew. All night, through storm, against his chest. No force, no rope. You trust him with your life." Sage Mother's eyes held something that might have been pity. "By old law, this means you are his woman now, his wife." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She stumbled to her feet, ignoring the dizziness. No, that's not. I was unconscious. I didn't choose anything." "Choices made by actions, not words," Sage Mother said quietly. "You could have fought, could have thrown yourself from horse, but you rest against him, accept his protection. In eyes of our people, this is, how you say, declaration." Sarah pushed past the old woman and burst out of the wickiup. The crowd turned to stare at her, dozens of Apache faces, some curious, some hostile, some merely surprised. Her rescuer stood rigid, his dark eyes finding hers across the distance. "This is insane," she shouted in English, knowing most wouldn't understand but needing to say it anyway. "I am not your wife. I didn't agree to anything. I was dying." The ancient man with the staff, clearly some sort of spiritual leader, spoke again. A younger man translated, his English better than most. "Ghost Dancer says the signs are clear. The white woman came to Standing Wolf in the storm. She placed her life in his hands. She slept against his heart through the night. The spirits have spoken." Standing Wolf. So that was his name. Sarah looked at him desperately, searching for some sign that he was as appalled by this as she was, but his face remained unreadable, carved from stone. Chief Naichi stepped forward. He was younger than Sarah had expected, perhaps 40, with an intelligent face marked by years of hardship. When he spoke, it was in carefully pronounced English. "This matter brings difficulty. You are white. Your people will say we stole you. They will bring soldiers." "Then let me go," Sarah pleaded. "I'll tell them you saved me, that you were kind." "And they will believe you?" Naichi's smile was bitter. "White woman defends Apache. They will say we did things to your mind, made you crazy. No, they will come with guns either way." Black Crow spat on the ground. His translator relayed his words. "Kill her now. Leave body far from camp. No one knows she was here." Several warriors nodded agreement. Sarah's blood ran cold. Standing Wolf moved then, positioning himself between her and Black Crow. He spoke for the first time since she'd awakened, his voice low but carrying unmistakable authority. "My woman," he said in English, the words clearly difficult for him. "My protect." Black Crow's hand went to his knife. The tension in the camp ratcheted up another notch. Women pulled children back. Warriors shifted their stances subtly, choosing sides. "Enough!" Chief Naichi's voice cracked like a whip. "We do not spill blood in camp over this. The old law has been invoked. Ghost Dancer has spoken. The woman stays as Standing Wolf's wife unless—" He paused, looking directly at Sarah. "Unless she proves the joining is false, that she did not trust him, did not accept his protection freely." "How?" Sarah asked desperately. "How do I prove that?" Ghost Dancer spoke again, gesturing with his staff. The translator looked uncomfortable as he relayed the words. "You must show you have no trust in Standing Wolf, that you fear him as enemy. For 7 sons, you must run from him, hide from him, refuse his food, his shelter, his protection. If you succeed, you are free. If you fail—" He shrugged eloquently. Sarah's heart sank. 7 days of actively rejecting help in this harsh environment? It was virtually a death sentence. She looked around the camp, at the women watching her with expressions ranging from sympathy to suspicion, at the children peeking out from behind their mothers' skirts, at the warriors clearly divided about her presence. "And if I refuse this test?" Chief Naichi's expression hardened. "Then you accept the marriage. You become Apache. You live as Apache, die as Apache, never return to White World." Sarah felt the ground sway beneath her feet. This couldn't be happening. Just yesterday morning, she'd been part of a wagon train headed for California. Now she was trapped in an Apache camp, declared the wife of a man whose language she couldn't even speak. Standing Wolf said something in Apache to Chief Naichi, then turned and walked away without looking at her. The crowd began to disperse. The morning's entertainment over. Sarah stood alone in the center of the camp, the Texas sun already climbing toward its merciless zenith. Sage Mother appeared at her elbow. "Come, you need food. Stronger clothes if you mean to run. I give you these things. It is allowed. After that—" She shrugged. "After that, you are alone." Sarah followed the old woman back to the wickiup on trembling legs. Inside, Sage Mother produced a pair of moccasins and a simple hide dress. "Your white woman clothes no good for desert. These better." As Sarah changed, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" Sage Mother was quiet for a long moment. "Standing Wolf is good man, strong warrior, but he carries much pain. His first wife, Little Dove, killed by white soldiers 3 winters past. Baby daughter too. He says he will never take another wife." She looked at Sarah meaningfully. "Yet he brings you here. Spirits work in strange ways." "I'm not his wife," Sarah insisted. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding." Perhaps not. 7 days will tell." Sage Mother handed her a water skin and a small pouch of dried meat. Advice I give. Do not run far. Desert will kill you faster than any Apache law. Hide, yes. Run, yes. But stay where you can see camp smoke, and watch for rattlesnake, scorpion, cat of the mountains. Sarah took the supplies with shaking hands. When does the test begin? When sun reaches highest point, then Standing Wolf will seek you. If he finds you, brings you back, gives you food or water or shelter, test is failed. Sage Mother's eyes held a glimmer of something that might have been amusement. He is best tracker in 5 bands. Has never lost prey. Wonderful, Sarah thought bitterly. She was expected to evade a master tracker in his own territory, with no knowledge of the land, no real supplies, and no hope of actual escape. The only thing worse than succeeding would be failing. As the morning wore on, Sarah prepared as best she could. She studied the camp's layout, the surrounding terrain, possible hiding spots. The Apache went about their daily business, pointedly ignoring her. Only the children stared openly, fascinated by the white woman who'd appeared in their midst like some exotic bird. Standing Wolf remained invisible. Sarah wondered if he was preparing too, or if he was so confident in his abilities that he needed no preparation. The thought sparked anger in her, anger at him, at the situation, at the cruel universe that had taken everything from her and now played this cosmic joke. When the sun reached its apex, Ghost Dancer emerged from his wickiup and struck a drum 3 times. The sound echoed across the camp like a death knell. Sarah's test had begun. She ran, clutching her meager supplies, heading for a cluster of rocks she'd spotted earlier. Behind her, she heard no pursuit. Standing Wolf would give her time to hide. She realized this was about honor, about proving the truth of their marriage, not about immediate capture. As she scrambled over the burning rocks, her white woman's skin already reddening under the fierce sun. One thought kept repeating in her mind, only to wake as his unwilling, burning bride. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was burning indeed, burning with anger, with fear, with the desert sun that threatened to cook her alive. And somewhere in this vast, hostile landscape, her husband was preparing to hunt her down. 7 days. She just had to survive 7 days. The 7 days had passed like 7 years. Sarah's test had ended in failure on the 4th day when exhaustion and dehydration finally overcame her stubborn will. Standing Wolf had found her collapsed behind a cluster of desert willows, barely conscious, lips cracked and bleeding. He'd carried her back to camp without a word, his face revealing nothing of what he thought about her desperate attempt at freedom. Now, 3 weeks later, Sarah sat outside the wickiup she unwillingly shared with Standing Wolf, watching the daily life of the Apache camp unfold before her. The hostility had not faded. If anything, it had intensified. Women walked wide paths around her. Children were scolded for staring, and warriors looked through her as if she didn't exist. "White witch," she heard them whisper in broken English when they thought she couldn't hear. "Bad luck, woman." Only Sage Mother continued to treat her with basic kindness, teaching her essential Apache words and showing her how to prepare food. Standing Wolf himself was more ghost than husband. He slept outside the wickiup, left before dawn for hunting or scouting, and spoke to her only when absolutely necessary. This morning was different. A commotion at the camp's edge drew everyone's attention. A hunting party was returning, but something was wrong. They carried a small figure between them, a child. Sarah recognized him as Little Hawk, a boy of perhaps 8 years, who was one of the few who still smiled at her when his mother wasn't looking. "Mountain cat," someone said in English for her benefit, or perhaps to blame her presence for this misfortune too. The boy's leg was badly mauled, blood seeping through the rough bandages. The camp's medicine woman, Singing River, was away gathering herbs. The wounded child's mother wailed, cradling her son's head as his face grew paler. Sarah watched the chaos, her hands clenching and unclenching. Back in Missouri, she'd helped the local doctor treat injuries many times. She knew what needed to be done, but she also knew her place here. Any interference would be seen as more white meddling, more proof that she didn't belong. She forced herself to remain seated, even as Little Hawk's breathing became shallow. "You know something." Sage Mother had appeared beside her, those sharp eyes missing nothing. "You have healing knowledge." Sarah nodded reluctantly. "I've treated wounds like this before, but they don't want my help. Pride kills more Apache than bullets," Sage Mother said quietly. She raised her voice, speaking rapidly in Apache. Several people turned, including Little Hawk's mother. A heated exchange followed. Standing Wolf emerged from wherever he'd been, drawn by the argument. His eyes found Sarah immediately, a question in them. Sage Mother spoke to him urgently, gesturing between Sarah and the wounded child. He crossed to Sarah in 3 strides. "You can help him." "Maybe, yes, but I need clean water, boiled, cloth for bandages, willow bark for the pain, if you have it, and—" She hesitated. "They have to let me work, no interference." Standing Wolf turned to the crowd and spoke with an authority that surprised her. This was not the quiet, withdrawn man who avoided her gaze. This was a leader, a warrior who expected obedience. The crowd reluctantly parted. Sarah knelt beside Little Hawk, pushing aside her nervousness. The wounds were deep but clean. The mountain cat's claws had missed the major blood vessels. She worked quickly, drawing on everything Dr. Morrison had taught her back home. Clean the wound, check for debris, pack with herbs to prevent infection, bind tightly but not so tight as to cut off blood flow. The boy whimpered but didn't cry out. His mother held his hand, tears streaming down her face. The entire camp seemed to hold its breath as Sarah worked. She was acutely aware of Standing Wolf's presence behind her, of the weight of expectation and suspicion. When she finally sat back, Little Hawk's color had improved and his breathing was steady. "He needs rest and clean bandages twice a day," she said to his mother, forgetting the woman couldn't understand English. Standing Wolf translated. For a moment, the camp was silent. Then Little Hawk's mother reached out and touched Sarah's hand, a brief contact, but unmistakably grateful. She spoke softly in Apache. Standing Wolf translated. "She says, 'Thank you.'" The crowd dispersed slowly, but something had shifted. The looks were less hostile now, more curious. A few women lingered, watching as Sarah cleaned up the medical supplies. One, braver than the rest, asked through gestures about a cut on her own hand that had been slow to heal. Over the following days, Sarah found herself becoming an unofficial assistant to Singing River, who returned from her herb gathering to find her position not usurped, but enhanced. The medicine woman was suspicious at first, but practical enough to recognize useful knowledge when she saw it. "White medicine, Apache medicine," Singing River said one morning as they worked side by side, preparing poultices. "Both have power. Together, maybe stronger." It wasn't acceptance, not truly, but it was a beginning. Sarah learned to identify desert plants with healing properties, while teaching Singing River about preventing infection and proper wound cleaning. The children, always the first to forgive, began approaching her again. Standing Wolf remained distant, but she caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Their arrangement was awkward at best, married in the eyes of the tribe, but strangers in every real sense. He continued to sleep outside, entering the wickiup only to retrieve belongings. One evening, as Sarah was returning from helping with a difficult birth, she found Black Crow blocking her path. His eyes were dark with anger, and he spoke in English, wanting her to understand every word. "You think you fool us? Play good white woman, help Apache children." He spat at her feet. "I know what you are. Spy. You count our warriors, learn our ways, then run to soldiers." "That's not true," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I never asked to be here." "No, you asked to die in desert. Standing Wolf should have let you." His hand went to his knife. "Maybe I fix his mistake." Sarah stepped back, her heart racing. The camp seemed suddenly very far away. But before Black Crow could move, Standing Wolf appeared like a shadow given form. He spoke quietly in Apache, but his tone carried lethal warning. Black Crow sneered something back. Standing Wolf's response was to simply step between them, his back to Sarah, facing down the other warrior. The message was clear: to get to her, Black Crow would have to go through him. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then Black Crow laughed, an ugly sound, and walked away. Standing Wolf turned to Sarah, his face unreadable in the dying light. "Thank you," she whispered. He studied her for a long moment. "You helped, Little Hawk. Why? They are not your people." Sarah thought about how to answer. A hurt child is a hurt child. It doesn't matter what color their skin is or what language they speak. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Your heart is good," he said finally. But Black Crow is not alone in his thinking. "Many believe you bring danger." "And you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "What do you believe?" Standing Wolf was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if seeing beyond the present. "Night you came, I dreamed of white dove turning black, Black Crow turning white, change coming, for good or ill." He met her eyes. "You are part of this change." "I feel it." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing alone in the gathering darkness. That night, for the first time since her failed escape, he entered the wiki up to sleep. He still kept distance between them, his back turned, but his presence filled the small space. Sarah lay awake, listening to his breathing, thinking about changes and choices. She thought about the wagon train, probably in California by now, telling tales of her death. She thought about her sister. Who would mourn her? She thought about this strange new life she'd fallen into, like Alice down the rabbit hole into a world with different rules. Outside, a coyote howled at the moon. The sound was answered by another, then another, until the night filled with their wild song. The Apache believed coyotes were tricksters. Sage Mother had told her, bringing chaos and change wherever they went. Perhaps she was a trickster too, Sarah thought, a white woman among the Apache, a reluctant bride who was no bride at all, a healer who bridged two worlds without belonging to either. The notion should have been depressing, but somehow, listening to Standing Wolf's steady breathing and the coyote's distant chorus, she felt something like peace. In the morning, there would be new challenges. Black Crow's resentment would not fade. The approaching winter would test everyone's survival, and somewhere out there, the white world would continue its inexorable push westward, bringing conflicts she couldn't imagine. But tonight, in this wiki-up that smelled of sage and smoke, with her unwilling husband sleeping an arm's length away and the stars wheeling overhead in their ancient patterns, Sarah McKenna allowed herself to exist in this moment. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. She reached out in the darkness, not to touch Standing Wolf, but to feel the buffalo hide that separated them. It was warm from his body heat, solid and real. On the other side, she heard his breathing change, knew he was awake and aware of her movement. Neither spoke, but in that shared silence, something shifted between them. Not love, not yet even friendship, but perhaps the first fragile thread of understanding. It was more than many marriages had, Sarah thought with bitter humor. More than she'd had with Thomas in the end, when drink and despair had claimed him. The coyotes sang on, and Sarah finally slept, dreaming of doves and crows and transformations in the desert night. The drought came like a curse upon the land. For 2 months, no rain had fallen, and the usual water sources dried to cracked mud. The Rio Grande ran low, forcing the camp to move twice in search of better access. Game grew scarce as animals migrated toward whatever water remained in the mountains. Sarah had never imagined the desert could become even more unforgiving. But the drought proved her wrong. The heat was a living thing, pressing down from a brass sky that showed no mercy. Even the hardy Apache struggled, rationing water carefully, sending hunting parties farther afield with diminishing returns. "Sky is angry," Singing Rivers said one morning as they searched for medicinal plants in a dry wash. Most of the vegetation had withered, but Sarah had developed an eye for finding the few survivors. No ceremonies bring rain. Spirits turn faces away. Sarah didn't challenge the spiritual interpretation. She'd learned that Apache beliefs and practical knowledge were intertwined in ways her white upbringing hadn't prepared her to understand. What mattered was that everyone was suffering, and tensions in the camp ran as high as the temperature. 3 days later, those tensions exploded. A hunting party returned with disturbing news. White settlers had dammed a crucial stream 2 valleys over, diverting all the water for their cattle operation. The stream had fed a spring the Apache had relied on for generations. "We go and tear down dam," Black Crow declared at the council meeting. Sarah sat at the edge, her presence now tolerated if not welcomed at such gatherings. "Take back our water, and bring soldiers." Chief Nightshee responded wearily. "They look for excuse to attack. We give them one. So we die of thirst instead?" Black Crow's supporter, Red Sky, demanded, "Watch our children grow weak." Standing Wolf had been silent throughout the debate, but now he spoke. "There is another spring, hidden. Old ones showed me when I was boy. Half-day's ride into the canyon lands. If it exists," Black Crow said dismissively. "If it still flows, I will go see." Standing Wolf said simply, "Take others who wish to come." The expedition was arranged for dawn. Sarah was tending to an elderly woman's heat exhaustion when Standing Wolf appeared at her side. "You come," he said. It wasn't a question. "Me? Why?" "You have learned to see water signs. Desert has taught you." He paused. "And if spring is found, someone must test if water is good, not poisoned by earth." Sarah understood. Her knowledge of minerals and contamination, learned from Dr. Morrison, could prevent the tribe from trading one disaster for another. She nodded agreement. The party that set out before sunrise was small. Standing Wolf, Sarah, 2 younger warriors named Swift Arrow and Broken Hand, and surprisingly, Sage Mother. Old bones remember paths young eyes miss, she said when Sarah expressed concern about the journey's demands. They rode in silence as the sun climbed, the heat already oppressive despite the early hour. Sarah had learned to ride Apache style, without saddle, moving with the horse rather than fighting it. Her mount was a steady pinto Standing Wolf had chosen for her, ugly but sure-footed. The landscape changed as they entered the canyon lands. Red rock walls rose on either side, carved by wind and ancient waters into fantastic shapes. Standing Wolf led them through a maze of passages, some so narrow the horses could barely fit. "How do you remember the way?" Sarah asked during a brief rest. "Stories," he replied. "Each turn has story. Grandfather made me repeat until paths lived in my mind." They pushed deeper into the canyons. The red walls provided some shade, but also trapped heat like an oven. Swift Arrow's horse stumbled, nearly lame. They were down to their last water skins when Standing Wolf suddenly stopped. "Listen," he said. Sarah heard nothing at first, then, faintly, the sound of water trickling over stone. Her heart leaped, but she noticed Standing Wolf's expression remained cautious. They dismounted and proceeded on foot around a final bend. There it was, a natural basin fed by a spring seeping from the rock face. The pool was clear but small, the flow barely more than a trickle. "Less than before," Sage Mother said sadly. "When I was girl, water poured like river here." Standing Wolf knelt to taste it, but Sarah stopped him. "Let me test first." She examined the water carefully, checking for discoloration. Unusual smell. "Any sign of mineral contamination?" She tasted a tiny amount, waiting for any burning or bitter sensation. Finally, she nodded. "It's good. Safe." Relief washed over the group. They refilled their water skins, let the horses drink carefully. But the spring's weak flow was troubling. It might supplement the tribe's water supply, but couldn't sustain them alone. "We need to find why flow is weak," Sarah said, studying the rock formation. "The water has to be coming from somewhere higher up." Standing Wolf looked at her with surprise. "You think like Apache now. I think like someone who doesn't want to die of thirst," she replied, but felt oddly pleased by his observation. They spent hours exploring the area, climbing higher into the canyon system. It was Broken Hand who found it. A rock slide had partially blocked the spring source higher up the cliff. Clear evidence showed it was recent, probably triggered by the earth tremors they'd felt weeks ago. "Can we clear it?" Swift Arrow asked doubtfully. The rocks were massive. tons of sandstone jumbled together. "Not with hands," Standing Wolf said. "Need tools, more men, take days, maybe weeks." Sarah studied the blockage from different angles. An idea formed, dangerous but possible. "There!" She pointed to a keystone boulder. "If we could shift that one rock, the pressure might cause the others to move, like when loggers clear jams in rivers." "And if rocks fall wrong way," Sage Mother asked, "crush us like ants? Then we're no worse off than dying slowly of thirst." Sarah replied. Standing Wolf considered, then nodded. "We try." They used horses, ropes, and wooden levers scavenged from dead trees. The work was exhausting. The sun brutal despite the canyon walls. Sarah's hands bled from rope burns. Her shoulders screamed from strain. But Standing Wolf worked beside her, steady and tireless, and she found herself matching his rhythm. The critical moment came as the keystone finally shifted. "Run!" Standing Wolf shouted, grabbing Sarah and pulling her clear as tons of rock tumbled and crashed. Dust filled the air, choking thick. When it cleared, they saw water. Not a torrent, but a steady flow streaming down the cliff face into the pool below. The spring sang again, its voice stronger. "You did it," Swift Arrow said, wonder in his voice as he looked at Sarah. "White woman saves Apache water." "We all did it," Sarah corrected, but she saw the change in how the warriors viewed her. Even Broken Hand, who'd been cold before, offered her a nod of respect. They camped by the spring that night, too exhausted to make the return journey, as stars emerged in the strip of sky visible between canyon walls. Standing Wolf sat beside Sarah at the pool's edge. "You risked much today," he said. "Could have stayed safe in camp." "Safe?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Dying of thirst with the rest?" "No, I mean, you could have said nothing about rocks. Let Apache fail, grow weaker, made escape easier later." The thought honestly hadn't occurred to her. When had her focus shifted from escape to survival? When had them become us in her mind? "Those children in camp need water," she said finally. "That's all that mattered." Standing Wolf was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for his neck, removing a small leather pouch he always wore. From it, he pulled a blue stone carved into the shape of a bird. "This was Little Dove's," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "She wore it on wedding day. I would like you to have it." Sarah's breath caught. She understood the significance of this gesture, the wall he was breaking down. "I can't. Please." He pressed it into her hand. "You have eagle heart. See far, fly high. Little Dove would understand." Sarah closed her fingers around the small carved bird, feeling its smooth warmth. "Tell me about her." And he did, there by the restored spring under desert stars. He spoke of meeting Little Dove at a gathering of bands, her laugh that sounded like water over stones. Their daughter, Morning Star, who had her mother's eyes and his stubborn spirit. The attack that took them while he was away hunting, returning to find only ashes and sorrow. "Thought my heart was buried with them," he said quietly. "Dead thing in chest, but you." He struggled for words in English. "You make it beat again, different rhythm, but alive." Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. Without thinking, she reached out and touched a scar on his forearm. "This? From that day. Tried to dig through Burning Lodge. Warriors pulled me away." His hand covered hers. "Was angry they saved me. Long time angry. And now?" He turned her hand over, tracing the calluses and cuts from today's labor. "Now I think spirits knew you would come. Knew I needed reason to live, even if I fought against it." The moment stretched between them, fragile and profound. Then Sage Mother's snoring from across the camp broke the spell, and they both laughed softly. "We should sleep," Standing Wolf said. "Long ride tomorrow." But neither moved. They sat by the singing spring, hands barely touching, as the stars wheeled overhead and the desert night wrapped around them like a blanket. For the first time since that sandstorm brought them together, Sarah didn't think about the life she'd lost or the future's uncertainty. She existed in this moment, beside this man who was learning to live again just as she was learning a new way to be. When they finally made camp, Standing Wolf spread his blanket beside hers without comment. They lay looking up at the stars through the canyon's narrow opening, the spring's gentle music their lullaby. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "For the stone, for everything." "No," he replied softly. "I thank you for seeing water where others saw only rock, for seeing man where there was only ghost." Sarah clutched the carved bird, feeling its edges press into her palm. Tomorrow they would return to camp with news of water. There would be celebration, but also more challenges. Black Crow's resentment, the settlers' dam, the drought's continuation. But tonight, she had this, the sound of flowing water, the warmth of Standing Wolf beside her, and a small blue bird that carried the weight of trust and perhaps the first whispers of something deeper. The desert had taken everything from her, stripped her down to bare survival. But perhaps, she thought as sleep finally claimed her, it was giving something back, something unexpected and precious, flowing like water from stone. The news traveled faster than wildfire. Within days of their return with water, whispers reached the camp. The white woman who lived with the Apache had been seen. A trader passing through the settlements had recognized Sarah from descriptions given by survivors of her wagon train. The story spread through the frontier towns like poison. A white woman held captive, forced into savage ways, needing rescue. Sarah learned of it from Singing River, who had heard from her cousin who traded with the Mexicans. "Soldiers will come," the medicine woman said grimly. "White men say you are prisoner. Say we." She made a gesture that needed no translation. "But that's not true," Sarah protested. "I could tell them." "Tell them what?" Singing River's eyes were sad but knowing. "That you are wife to Apache warrior? That you choose to stay? They will not believe. Will say we poisoned your mind, used dark magic." She touched Sarah's sun-browned arm. "You look Apache now. Dress Apache. Speak our words. To them, this is proof we stole your soul." The camp buzzed with tension. Chief Naichi called council after council, debating whether to move deeper into Mexico or stand their ground. Black Crow used every opportunity to remind people that he'd warned them about keeping the white woman. "She brings death to us," he declared loudly enough for Sarah to hear as she passed. "Blue coats will burn our lodges looking for her." Standing Wolf had grown quieter with each passing day, the brief warmth from their night at the spring retreating behind walls of worry. Sarah found him one evening sitting alone on a ridge overlooking the camp, his rifle across his knees. "You're standing guard," she observed, settling beside him. "Someone must watch." He replied without looking at her. "Soldiers could come any time." "This is my fault?" Sarah said quietly. "If I hadn't—" "No." His voice was sharp. "Fault belongs to those who see only what they wish to see, who think Apache cannot have willing white wife." The word wife still felt strange between them, but less so than before. In the weeks since finding the spring, something had shifted. They shared the wiki up now, without awkwardness. She knew how he liked his meat cooked, which mocassins he preferred for hunting. He brought her interesting stones from his travels, knowing she collected them. Small intimacies that built like sediment into something solid. "What will happen when they come?" she asked. Standing Wolf finally looked at her, and she saw fear there. Not for himself, but for her, for his people. "Depends on how many. If few, maybe we talk. If many..." He gestured toward Mexico. "We run, always running." 3 days later, the dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Sarah was helping repair fishing nets when the scout's whistle pierced the air. Women grabbed children, men reached for weapons. The evacuation plan, practiced many times, went into effect. But as the riders drew closer, it became clear this wasn't the army. Just 6 men, civilian clothes, riding hard. Sarah's heart sank as she recognized the lead rider, Samuel Morrison, Ben's older brother, from the wagon train. The others were hired guns by their look, hard men with harder eyes. Chief Naichi met them at the camp's edge, Standing Wolf and other warriors flanking him. Sarah stayed back, but Samuel spotted her immediately. "Sarah McKenna!" he called out. Thank God, we've come to rescue you. The word rescue fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Sarah felt every eye in the camp upon her. This was the moment. She could go with them, return to her old life, leave all this behind. No one would stop her if she chose to go. She stepped forward slowly, aware of Standing Wolf's rigid posture, of the weapons held ready on both sides. Samuel dismounted, his face showing relief and something else, a possessive gleam that made her uncomfortable. "You poor thing," he said, reaching for her. "What have these savages done to you? Don't worry, we'll get you cleaned up and proper again." Sarah stepped back from his reaching hands. "I'm not going with you, Samuel." Confusion crossed his face. "What? You don't understand. You're safe now. We've come to take you home. I am home," she said quietly, but firmly. The silence stretched taut. One of the hired guns shifted in his saddle, hand moving toward his pistol. Standing Wolf's rifle lifted slightly in response. "They've done something to her mind," Samuel said to his men, then louder. For the Apache to hear. "She's not thinking clearly. Look at her, dressed like one of them. Probably forced to... His face reddened. "We're taking her, by force if necessary." "Try," Standing Wolf said in clear English, stepping forward. "See what happens. So you speak our language, savage?" Samuel sneered. "Is she your squaw then? Did you ruin her?" The insult hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah saw Standing Wolf's knuckles whiten on his rifle, saw warriors on both sides tense for violence. In that moment, she understood with crystal clarity. Blood would spill here. People would die, all for the sake of rescuing her from a life she'd chosen. "Enough!" She stepped between the two groups, addressing Samuel but speaking loudly enough for all to hear. "Yes, I am his wife, by my own choice. No force, no coercion. I spoke vows witnessed by the tribe and blessed by their holy man." The lie came easily. There had been no ceremony, but they needn't know that. "I am here because I choose to be." "You can't mean that," Samuel protested. "You're a white woman, a Christian." "I'm a woman who was left to die in the desert by her own people," Sarah interrupted, letting anger color her voice. "The wagon train abandoned me when my wagon was destroyed, left me to walk until I collapsed. Would have died if not for Apache kindness." She saw shock on Samuel's face. Clearly, a different version of events had been told. "That's not... Ben said you were taken during the attack. Ben was a scared boy who made hard choices." Sarah said more gently. "I don't blame him, but I won't go back to people who measure my worth by whether I'm useful to them." She touched the blue bird carving at her throat. "Here, I am valued. Here, I am loved." The last word slipped out unbidden, but she didn't take it back. She felt Standing Wolf move closer behind her, not touching but present, supporting. Samuel's face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, anger, disgust. "You're making a mistake. When the army comes, and they will come, they won't care about your choices. They'll slaughter every Apache here and take you anyway." "Then I'll stand with my husband and my people," Sarah replied. "As a wife should." One of the hired guns spat tobacco juice. "Waste of time. Morrison. Woman wants to be a squaw. Let her... Plenty of other white women need saving who'll be grateful for it." But Samuel wasn't done. His hand moved to his saddlebag. "I have something for you. From your sister." He pulled out a letter. "She thinks you're dead. Mourns you." Sarah's resolve wavered. Martha, her only blood family, mourning her. She took the letter with trembling hands but didn't open it. "I'll write to her. Let her know I'm alive and well. But I won't return." "You're really choosing them over your own kind?" Samuel's voice dripped disdain. "Over civilization? Over God?" "I'm choosing love over fear," Sarah said simply. "Peace over prejudice. A hard life with meaning over an easy one, without..." She stepped back, closer to Standing Wolf. "Please go. Tell anyone who asks that I'm here by choice, that I'm happy." Samuel looked like he wanted to argue further, but one of his men spoke up. "Morrison, we need to go. This place will be swarming with bucks soon." With a final disgusted look, Samuel mounted his horse, When you come to your senses and it'll be too late. No decent white man will have you after this." "Good," Sarah replied. "I already have the only man I want." They rode away in a cloud of dust and shouted curses. Sarah stood watching until they disappeared, aware of the profound line she'd just crossed. There would be no going back now. The frontier would know she'd chosen the Apache way. She'd be dead to that world. Standing Wolf's hand touched her shoulder. "You spoke truth," he asked quietly in Apache. "About choosing, about love." Sarah turned to face him, seeing vulnerability in his warrior's eyes. "Did you not know?" she replied in his language. The great tracker who reads sign in dust could not read sign in woman's heart. His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. "Hoped, feared to hope. Fear no more," she whispered. Around them, the camp slowly returned to normal activities, but Sarah saw the change in how people looked at her. She had been tested in a way their own traditions couldn't devise, and she had chosen them over her birth people. Even Black Crow watched with something that might have been grudging respect. That night, Chief Naichi called her to his fire. "Your words today may have prevented bloodshed," he said, "but they also seal your fate. The white world will not forgive what they see as betrayal." "I know," Sarah replied. "Army will still come. Your choice will not stop them." "I know that too." The chief studied her. "Then we must prepare, and you must truly become one of us, not just in dress or language, but in ceremony, in spirit." He glanced at Standing Wolf. "A proper joining, blessed by all traditions. So when soldiers come, they face not captive and captor, but Apache family united." Sarah felt Standing Wolf's tension and understood. A true ceremony would bind them in ways their accidental marriage hadn't. It would mean fully accepting not just him, but his world, his spirits, his ways of seeing. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I would be honored." Later, in their wiki-up, Standing Wolf held her as she finally read Martha's letter by firelight. Her sister's grief-stricken words cut deep, but also strengthened Sarah's resolve. The woman Martha mourned, proper, obedient Sarah who did what was expected. That woman had died in the desert. Who lived now was someone stronger, someone who chose her own path. "Will you write to her?" Standing Wolf asked. "Yes, tomorrow. I'll tell her I'm alive, that I'm happy, that I've found where I belong." She folded the letter carefully. "She won't understand, but maybe someday." "Someday doesn't matter," Standing Wolf said, pulling her closer. "Only today matters. Today, you chose us, chose me, every day," Sarah promised, turning in his arms. "I choose you every day." Outside, thunder rumbled, the first promise of rain in months. The drought might be ending, Sarah thought, but storm clouds of a different kind were gathering. The army would come. As Chief Naichi predicted, their love, their life, would be tested by forces greater than either of them. But tonight, with the rain beginning to fall and her husband's arms around her, Sarah allowed herself this moment of peace. She had crossed her Rubicon, burned her bridges back to the white world. Whatever came next, she would face it as what she had become, an Apache wife, a woman who chose love over convention, belonging over blood. The rain drummed harder on the wiki-up, and Sarah smiled. The desert was blooming again, and so was she. The ceremony was set for the full moon, 3 weeks after Samuel Morrison's visit. In that time, the camp transformed, despite the looming threat of military intervention, or perhaps because of it. The Apache threw themselves into preparation with determined joy. This would be a proper wedding, a binding not just of two people but of two worlds, witnessed by spirits and blessed by tradition. Sarah found herself swept into a whirlwind of activity. Sage Mother and Singing River took charge of her preparation, teaching her the women's ceremonial songs, the meaning behind each ritual element. Her wedding dress was crafted by the best seamstresses in the camp, soft doeskin adorned with hundreds of tin cones that would sing with her movements. Intricate beadwork telling stories of strength and adaptation. You cannot wear white woman's sadness into new life. Sage Mother explained as she taught Sarah to prepare the traditional cornmeal cakes. Must leave sorrow at river. Let water carry away. Start clean. The cleansing ceremony took place at dawn, a week before the wedding. Sarah stood waist-deep in the cold river water while the elder women sang prayers around her. As instructed, she spoke her griefs to the flowing water: Thomas's death, the loss of her old life, the pain of abandonment, the fear of an uncertain future. The river took them all, carrying them away toward distant seas. When she emerged, shivering but somehow lighter, Standing Wolf was waiting on the bank with a blanket. He wrapped it around her shoulders, his eyes soft with understanding. "Feel different?" he asked. "Empty," Sarah said, then reconsidered. "No, not empty. Ready. Ready to be filled with something new." But the shadow of approaching danger grew darker each day. Scouts reported increased military activity at Fort Buchanan. The trader who supplied information to Singing River's cousin had stopped coming, suggesting the settlements were preparing for conflict. Chief Naichi ordered extra sentries and began planning evacuation routes. "We do ceremony, then move camp," he decided at council, "into the canyon lands where horses cannot follow easily." Black Crow, surprisingly, had become less hostile since Sarah's public declaration. He still didn't trust her fully, but her rejection of the white rescuers had earned something like respect. "You spoke strong words to white men," he told her one evening as she helped his wife repair a torn buffalo hide. "Maybe heart is Apache after all. We see." 2 nights before the ceremony, Standing Wolf disappeared. Sarah woke to find his place empty, his weapons gone. Panic seized her until Sage Mother explained, "Is custom, warrior must go alone to sacred place, speak with spirits, ask blessing for joining, prepare his heart." She patted Sarah's hand. "He returns morning of ceremony, or not. If spirits say no." "What do you mean, or not?" Sarah asked, alarmed. "Sometimes spirits show warrior he chooses wrong path. Sometimes warrior doesn't return at all. Desert takes him, or enemies, or his own doubts." Sage Mother's eyes twinkled. "But Standing Wolf is strong." "And spirits already showed approval when they brought you to him in storm. He goes to hear what he already knows." Still, Sarah barely slept those 2 nights. She found herself standing outside their wickiup, scanning the darkness for any sign of his return. On the morning of the ceremony, as pink touched the eastern sky, she was there again, wrapped in a blanket against the pre-dawn chill. A figure emerged from the desert like a ghost becoming solid. Standing Wolf, walking with purpose, carrying something wrapped in leather. His eyes found hers immediately, and the smile that crossed his face made her knees weak with relief. "You came back," she whispered when he reached her. "Always," he replied, touching her face briefly. "Spirit spoke, showed me things." He handed her the leather bundle. "This is for you. For today." Inside was a necklace, not Apache-made, but clearly ancient. Turquoise and shell beads interspersed with carved fetishes of unfamiliar design. "From the old ones," Standing Wolf explained. "Found in sacred cave. Spirit said it waited for you, for woman who bridges worlds." The day passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah was bathed again, her hair washed with yucca root until it shone, then dressed in the beautiful wedding clothes. The tin cones made music with every movement, and she felt transformed. Neither the grieving widow from Missouri nor fully Apache, but something new, something uniquely herself. The ceremony began at sunset. The entire camp gathered in a great circle, with a ceremonial fire burning at the center. Chief Naichi presided, with Ghost Dancer invoking the spirits. Sarah entered from the east, Standing Wolf from the west, meeting at the fire as tradition demanded. The rituals were complex, meaningful. The sharing of corn pollen, the binding of hands with a sash woven from both Apache materials and threads Sarah had salvaged from her old dress. They walked clockwise around the fire 4 times, once for each direction, while the people sang blessings. When it came time for words, Standing Wolf spoke first in Apache, then English so Sarah would understand fully. "Before my people and all spirits, I take you as wife. Not because law says, not because tradition demands, but because heart chooses. You came in storm, stayed through drought, brought water from stone. You heal with gentle hands, fight with fierce spirit. I give you my protection, my provision, my truth. I share your joy, carry your sorrow, until last star falls. You are mine, and I am yours. Sarah's response came in Apache first, halting but clear, then English. Before your people who have become my people, before spirits I'm learning to honor, I choose you as husband. You saved my body from storm, my spirit from despair. You showed me strength can be gentle, that different worlds can touch without breaking. I give you my trust, my loyalty, my tomorrow. I tend your fire, share your path, heal your wounds, until the last star falls. I am yours, and you are mine. The crowd murmured approval at her Apache words. Even Black Crow nodded. Then came the surprise. Chief Naichi produced a worn Bible, one of the few trade goods the Apache had kept rather than sold. White woman's tradition too must be honored, he said solemnly. Speak words your people need. It was irregular, mixing Christian and Apache elements. But Standing Wolf took her hands and spoke the familiar vows she'd grown up with. I, Standing Wolf, take you, Sarah, as my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Sarah repeated the words, tears streaming down her face. Two traditions, two worlds, joined in one ceremony. When Chief Naichi pronounced them married by both laws, the camp erupted in celebration. The feast that followed was joyful despite the rationing made necessary by drought and impending flight. Everyone had contributed something precious preserved foods, carefully hoarded delicacies. There was dancing, storytelling, laughter that pushed back the darkness of uncertainty. Late in the evening, as Sarah danced with the women in the ceremonial round, a commotion arose at the camp's edge. Scouts were returning at speed, and their message spread like wildfire. Soldiers had been spotted 2 valleys over, at least a company's worth, making camp for the night. The music stopped. The laughter died. Reality crashed back like a cold wave. Chief Naichi didn't hesitate. We leave at first light. Pack only essentials. Women and children to the canyon lands first. Warriors follow to cover retreat. Sarah found Standing Wolf in the crowd. Our wedding night will be spent fleeing, she said, trying for lightness, but failing. No. His voice was firm. Tonight is ours. Tomorrow we face what comes. But tonight, we are only new husband and wife. They retired to their wickiup, now decorated with wedding gifts, blankets, pottery, tools for building a life together. Standing Wolf lit a small fire, the smoke carrying prayers upward through the smoke hole. I'm not afraid, Sarah said as they lay together on the new blankets. Whatever comes tomorrow, next week, next month, I regret nothing. Fear is wisdom sometimes, Standing Wolf replied, pulling her close. But regret is poison. We chose each other with eyes open, knowing the cost. Outside, the camp prepared for evacuation with quiet efficiency. Sarah could hear mothers soothing children, men checking weapons, the soft sounds of a people who had long practiced at running. But inside their wickiup, in the circle of firelight, there was only them, 2 people who had found each other across impossible divides, who had chosen love despite every reason not to. Tell me again about the Spirit's message. Sarah whispered. What did they show you? Standing Wolf was quiet for a moment. Showed me paths diverging, coming together, diverging again, like rivers that split but find each other downstream. Showed me children with golden hair and dark eyes. Showed me old age by water that never fails. He paused. But also showed me sorrow, separation, choices that cut like knives. Spirits don't promise easy path. I don't want easy, Sarah said fiercely. I had easy. It was empty. I want real, even if it hurts. He kissed her then, and for a time there were no words. No Apache or white, no soldiers or threats. Just 2 souls made one in ancient tradition and new promise. Dawn came too soon. Sarah woke to organized chaos as the camp dissolved around them. Wickiups came down with practiced speed. Goods loaded on horses and travois. She worked beside Standing Wolf, packing their new life into bundles that could be carried at speed. As the sun rose over the desert mountains, painting the rocks in shades of rose and gold, the exodus began. Women and children first, as planned, with Sarah among them. She looked back once to see Standing Wolf with the warriors, rifles ready, preparing to cover their retreat. Sage Mother, riding beside her, followed her gaze. "This is Apache life," she said simply. "Joy and sorrow mixed like honey and sage, but you knew this when you chose." "Yes," Sarah said, touching the ancient necklace at her throat, feeling the weight of the blue bird carving beside it. "I knew." Behind them, dust rose in the distance. The cavalry was moving. Ahead lay the canyon lands, temporary safety, and an uncertain future. But Sarah McKenna, Sarah Standing Wolf now, rode forward with her new people, her new family, into whatever destiny awaited. The wedding song still echoed in her heart, mixing with the thunder of hooves and the whisper of wind through rock. She had been given one perfect night as a bride. Now came the test of being a wife, an Apache woman, in a world that wanted to tear such unions apart. She squared her shoulders and rode on, the tin cones on her wedding dress singing with each movement, a song of defiance, of choice, of love that refused to bow to hatred. Behind her, she felt Standing Wolf's presence like a warm hand on her back, steady and sure. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The attack came at dawn, 5 days after they'd reached the canyon stronghold. The soldiers had found them faster than expected, guided by Apache scouts from rival bands who served the army for silver and promises. Sarah woke to the crack of rifle fire echoing off canyon walls, the screams of horses, the war cries of warriors rushing to defend their families. "Stay with the women," Standing Wolf commanded, grabbing his rifle. But Sarah was already reaching for the ammunition pouch, the medical supplies. She'd learned enough to know that in battle, everyone had a role. The canyon that had seemed like safety became a trap. Soldiers positioned on the rim fired down while others attempted to force the narrow entrance. The Apache fought with desperate courage, using every rock and crevice for cover, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Sarah worked with Singing River and the other women, dragging wounded warriors to shelter, stanching blood, dodging bullets that whined off rocks like angry wasps. Her wedding dress, still new, became stained with blood and dirt. Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of Standing Wolf, moving like smoke between defensive positions, his rifle speaking death to any soldier who showed himself. By midday, the situation was desperate. 7 warriors had fallen, including Swift Arrow, the young man who'd helped find the hidden spring. The soldiers had brought a mountain howitzer, and shells began falling into the canyon, each explosion shaking the earth and sending deadly rock fragments flying. "We cannot hold," Chief Naichi said grimly as the defenders gathered for a brief council. "Must break through, scatter, meet at Crying Woman Springs if we survive." It was then that the soldiers revealed their true purpose. A voice called down from the rim, amplified by a speaking trumpet. Sarah recognized it with a chill. Colonel Marcus Wade, known across the territory as an Indian fighter who took no prisoners. "Apache dogs, we know you have the white woman, Sarah McKenna. Send her out unharmed, and we'll allow your women and children to leave peacefully. You have 1 hour." The proclamation fell into sudden silence. Every eye in the canyon turned to Sarah. She felt the weight of their gaze, some hopeful, some resigned, some calculating. Even among those who'd accepted her, the arithmetic was simple. 1 white woman's life against the survival of their children. "No." Standing Wolf's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "She is Apache now, my wife. We do not trade our people to buy mercy from wolves." Black Crow stepped forward, and Sarah expected him to argue for accepting the deal. Instead, he spat toward the canyon entrance. "Standing Wolf speaks truth. She proved herself at the spring, at the wedding. To give her up would bring dishonor on us all." But Sarah had already made her decision. The faces of the children huddled in the caves. Little Hawk, whom she'd saved, now facing death because of her presence. She couldn't bear it. "I'll go," she said quietly. "No." Standing Wolf grabbed her arms. "You don't know what they'll do. I know what they'll do here if I don't." Sarah interrupted. Look at our people. Husband, look at the children. How many will die for the principle of keeping me? All of them, if needed. Chief Naichi said solemnly, "That is what it means to be Apache. We do not abandon our own." The hour given by Colonel Wade passed in fierce debate. Sarah argued for sacrifice, Standing Wolf for resistance, others torn between honor and survival. In the end, it was Ghost Dancer who provided an unexpected solution. "There is another way," the old shaman said. "White soldiers want to be heroes. Save white women from savages. Give them dead savages. Living women. They go away satisfied. Tell their story. You suggest we die for theater?" Black Crow asked skeptically. "Not die, appear to die." Ghost Dancer smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. "Old medicine. Make warriors seem dead. Wake later when soldiers gone." It was desperate, depending on deception and the soldiers' eagerness to claim victory. But it offered hope. Quickly, they prepared, Ghost Dancer's medicine distributed to volunteers. Blood from the wounded used to make the deception convincing. Sarah would be fought over and captured in view of the soldiers. "You must make it real," Standing Wolf told her as they prepared. "Fight me, scream, make them believe you want rescue." "And after?" Sarah asked. "They'll take me back to their world. I'll never be able to return." "You will." His certainty was absolute. "I will find you. Wherever they take you, I will come." The performance began as planned. Warriors who'd taken Ghost Dancer's medicine fell convincingly as blank charges were fired. Sarah fought Standing Wolf with genuine desperation, not to escape him, but to make the watching soldiers believe. When he finally fell, the medicine making his breathing so shallow as to be undetectable, she had to force herself not to cradle him, not to weep over his still form. Soldiers poured into the canyon, Colonel Wade at their head. He saw Sarah standing over Standing Wolf's body, her dress torn, hair wild, the perfect image of a rescued captive. "Mrs. McKenna, thank God we found you." He dismounted, approaching carefully as if she were a spooked animal. "You're safe now. These savages will never hurt you again." Sarah let herself collapse, exhaustion both real and performed. As soldiers lifted her, she saw the dead Apache being left where they fell. The colonel's interest was in live prisoners for trial, not corpses. The surviving women and children were being herded out, as promised, their men apparently dead. "No!" Sarah suddenly fought the soldiers holding her. "You said you'd let them go peacefully." "And we are," Colonel Wade said soothingly. "They'll be taken to the reservation at San Carlos. Better life than these mountains. I assure you, regular food. Civilizing influences." Sarah bit back her response. She'd heard of San Carlos, a place of death, disease, and despair, where proud Apache were penned like cattle. But arguing would break her role as traumatized captive, as they led her away. She managed one look back. Standing Wolf lay motionless where he'd fallen, along with a dozen other warriors. To anyone watching, it was a scene of decisive victory. Soldiers rescuing a white woman from her savage captors, leaving Apache men dead in the dust. But Sarah had seen Sage Mother's slight nod, the hand signal that meant the medicine was working. In hours, the dead would wake. They would find their families gone to San Carlos, would face the choice of following into captivity or remaining free but separated. The ride to Fort Buchanan took 2 days. Sarah was treated like precious glass, given the colonel's own tent, offered the best food, constantly asked about her ordeal. She played her part, speaking little, flinching from kindness as if it were foreign after months of supposed brutality. The trauma she's endured, she heard the fort doctor tell Colonel Wade. It may take years for her to recover fully. The mind can break under such strain. "Poor woman," Wade replied. "To think what those animals must have done. Well, she's safe now. We'll send her to her sister in California as soon as she's strong enough to travel." But Sarah's apparent weakness was calculation. She listened to everything, learned the routines, identified opportunities. Standing Wolf had promised to find her, but she had no intention of waiting passively. The Apache had taught her strength, survival, patience. She would use all three to reunite with her husband. On the fourth night at the fort, as she lay in the infirmary bed they'd insisted she needed, Sarah heard commotion outside. Apaches had been spotted in the hills, hostiles who'd escaped the roundup. The fort went on high alert, soldiers manning walls, scouts sent out. She smiled in the darkness. He was coming, as promised. The dead warrior searching for his captured bride. But Sarah knew he couldn't take her from the fort by force. Too many soldiers, too many guns. They would need to be cleverer than that. The next morning, she began her own campaign. First, she needed to convince them she was recovering, becoming civilized again. She asked for proper clothes, submitted to having her hair arranged in white woman's fashion. She spoke of her sister, of longing for California, of gratitude for rescue. "It's remarkable," the fort commander's wife said, watching Sarah embroider, a skill she'd never lost despite months of different work. "You'd never know to look at her what she's endured." But at night, Sarah watched the hills through her window. Sometimes she thought she saw movement, a flash of light that might be a signal mirror. Once, she found an eagle feather on her windowsill that hadn't been there the night before. He was close, waiting for their moment. That moment came sooner than expected. A supply wagon train arrived, heading for California. The commander decided Sarah was recovered enough to travel with it, under guard for her protection. It would take her through Apache territory. Dangerous, but faster than waiting for a proper escort. Sarah packed the few things she'd been given, including hidden within them the blue bird carving she'd refused to let them take, claiming it was a memento of her dead husband from the wagon train. As the wagon train prepared to leave, she scanned the horizon one last time. There, barely visible on a distant ridge, a lone rider. Even at that distance, she knew Standing Wolf's silhouette. He raised his rifle once, a salute and a promise, then vanished into the landscape. Sarah climbed into the wagon with the commander's wife's maid, who would accompany her as far as Tucson. The soldiers were vigilant, but relaxed. What Apache would attack a heavily guarded wagon train just for one woman? An Apache who'd promised to find her. An Apache who'd shown her that love could bloom in the harshest desert. An Apache whose death had been greatly exaggerated. As the wagon train rolled out of Fort Buchanan, Sarah touched the hidden blue bird carving and smiled. The soldiers thought they were taking her to safety, to civilization, to her old life. They were wrong. They were taking her exactly where Standing Wolf wanted her to be, outside the fort's protection. In territory he knew like his own heartbeat, where a determined warrior could reclaim what was his. The game wasn't over. It had barely begun. The rescue came on the third night out from Fort Buchanan. Sarah lay awake in the wagon, listening to the guards' routine movements. When she heard it, the call of a nighthawk, repeated 3 times, Standing Wolf's signal. Her heart raced as she slowly sat up, careful not to wake the maid sleeping beside her. Then chaos erupted. Not an attack, something more subtle. The horses began screaming and bucking, breaking their tethers. Soldiers ran to control them, shouting contradictory orders. In the confusion, Sarah saw shadows moving between the wagons. Not many, perhaps 3 or 4 warriors, creating maximum disruption with minimum force. A hand touched her shoulder. Standing Wolf, his face painted for night raiding, eyes bright with fierce joy. "Come," he whispered. "Now." Sarah didn't hesitate. She grabbed her small bundle, the one containing her Apache dress and the blue bird carving, and slipped from the wagon. They ran low, using the milling horses as cover. Behind them, she heard the maid wake and scream. "The savages have taken Mrs. McKenna!" But by then, they were beyond the circle of wagons, melting into the darkness. Other shapes joined them. Black Crow, surprisingly, and 2 younger warriors. They ran in silence, covering ground with the efficient lope Sarah had learned during her months with the Apache. Only when they reached the hidden horses did Standing Wolf speak. "San Carlos Reservation is 3 days south. Our people were taken there, but not all." He helped her mount. "Ghost Dancer led some families into Mexico. Others scatter, hide. We gather who we can, then decide. They rode hard through the night, changing horses at a cache Standing Wolf had prepared. As dawn broke, they took shelter in a box canyon, the horses hidden behind a screen of brush, safe for the moment. Sarah finally allowed herself to collapse into Standing Wolf's arms. "You came," she breathed against his chest. "Said I would." His hold tightened. "But Sarah, things are bad. Very bad. The soldiers burn ranches they say helped Apache, shoot men who resist, take children to white schools far away." His voice roughed with emotion. "Our world breaks apart. Then we build a new one," Sarah said fiercely. "Together." Black Crow approached, his expression grim. "Soldiers will follow. They want her back. Make big show of saving white woman. We cannot stay here." "Where can we go?" one of the younger warriors asked. "Mexico means leaving forever. Reservation means slow death." Sarah had been thinking about this during her captivity. "There's another way," she said slowly. "My sister in California. She has a ranch in the Sierras, isolated. If we could get there." "Live on white woman's charity?" Black Crow spat. "Hide like dogs. Live free," Sarah countered. "Work the land, build something new, not Apache way, not white way, something different." Standing Wolf considered. "Your sister would accept Apache on her land?" "Martha is different. Her husband died last year. She wrote me this before I left. She's alone, struggling to keep the ranch. If we came as workers, family, she might accept it." Sarah touched Standing Wolf's face. "It's not perfect, but it's hope." The debate continued as they rested. Some argued for Mexico, others for attempting to free their people from San Carlos. But as the sun climbed, they heard hoofbeats. Many hoofbeats. The army was tracking them. No more time for talk. Standing Wolf decided, "We ride for California. Those who wish to come, come. Others can go their own path." In the end, all 5 chose to stay together. They rode hard for days, dodging army patrols, living on dried meat and what little water they could find. Sarah's white woman's clothes were abandoned for her Apache dress. She would not pretend anymore to be what she wasn't. On the 7th day, exhausted and desperate, they faced a crisis. The army had telegraphed ahead. Posters with Sarah's description were in every town, every stage stop. Kidnapped white woman, reward for information. They couldn't use the main roads, but the desert routes were running dry. It was then that unexpected help arrived. At a hidden spring, they found Sage Mother waiting with a small band of escapees, women and children who'd fled San Carlos, including Little Hawk and his mother. "Ghost Dancer dreamed you would come here," Sage Mother explained. "Said the white Apache woman would lead us to new land." She smiled at Sarah's expression. "Yes, you are white Apache now. Not 2 things, but one new thing." Their group had grown to 15, too many to move quickly, too few to fight if cornered. But Standing Wolf and Sarah developed a desperate plan. They would split up, the women and children taking a longer but safer route through the mountains, the warriors creating diversions to draw pursuit. "No." Sarah grabbed Standing Wolf's arm when he explained, "We just found each other. I won't lose you again." "Not lose," he promised. "Different paths to same place. Like rivers the spirits showed me." He pressed a paper into her hands. A map, carefully drawn. "Your sister's ranch. I meet you there at next full moon." The parting was agony, but Sarah understood the necessity. She watched Standing Wolf ride away with the warriors, then turned to face her own challenge leading Apache women and children through hostile territory to a sanctuary that might not even accept them. The journey took 2 weeks, 2 weeks of hiding from pauses, of children crying from hunger, of Sage Mother growing weaker with each day, but also 2 weeks of bonds growing stronger. Sarah learned the women's stories, each a tragedy of loss and endurance. They learned hers, this white woman who'd chosen their world even as it crumbled. When they finally staggered onto Martha's ranch in the Sierra foothills, Sarah hardly recognized her sister. Martha had aged, hardened by widowhood and frontier life. But her eyes widened with shock and something like joy when she saw Sarah. "Sarah? My God, we thought you were dead." "I was," Sarah said simply. "That Sarah died. I'm someone else now." The reunion was complicated. Martha's initial joy turned to confusion as she took in Sarah's Apache dress, the indigenous women and children with her, but Sarah had judged her sister's character correctly. Martha was lonely, struggling, and above all, practical. "They'll work?" Martha asked after Sarah explained. "No stealing, no violence." Sage Mother understood enough English to answer, "We work hard, make good ranch." You see, it wasn't instant acceptance, but it was a beginning. The Apache women proved their worth quickly, their knowledge of plants and medicines invaluable. The children helped with animals, showing a gentleness that surprised Martha. Days passed. The full moon approached. Sarah found herself watching the horizon constantly, fear growing with each sunset. What if Standing Wolf had been captured, killed? What if he couldn't find this place? On the night of the full moon, Sarah sat outside, unable to sleep. The ranch was quiet. The Apache family settled in the old bunkhouse and barn. Martha had gone to town for supplies, trusting Sarah to manage things. A huge step. Then she heard it, the Nighthawk's call. 3 times. Standing Wolf emerged from the shadows. Thinner, a new scar on his cheek, but alive. Behind him came Black Crow and one of the young warriors. The 4th had been killed creating a diversion. Sarah flew into his arms, not caring who might see. "You found it?" "Found you," he corrected. "Always find you." The reunion was bittersweet. They grieved the lost warrior, worried for those still trapped at San Carlos or scattered across the territory. But here, in this unlikely sanctuary, they had carved out a small space for hope. Martha returned the next day to find her ranch transformed. The Apache men had already begun repairs she couldn't afford, using traditional techniques adapted to available materials. She stood speechless as Standing Wolf introduced himself as Sarah's husband. "This is insane," Martha said finally. "If people in town knew I was harboring Apache, then we make sure they don't know." Sarah said firmly, "We're Mexican workers. If anyone asks, mixed families, not so unusual in California." It wouldn't be easy. They all knew that. The world outside would never fully accept them. The Apache would always mourn their lost homeland. Sarah would always straddle 2 worlds. But that night, as they all shared a meal, Apache fry bread and Martha's beef stew, a mixing of traditions, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since before Thomas died. Not just hope, but home. Standing Wolf sat beside her, solid and real. Sage Mother told stories that made the children laugh. Martha, awkward but trying, attempted a few words in Apache that Black Crow corrected with unexpected patience. "I may have been your unwilling bride once," Sarah whispered to Standing Wolf as the stars emerged. "But now, I am burning for you. For this, for the life we're building from ashes, like the bird of white man's stories." Standing Wolf replied, remembering tales she'd shared. "Phoenix dies in fire, lives again." He touched the blue bird carving at her throat. But this bird didn't die, changed, became something new. Outside, coyotes howled in the distant hills, trickster spirits that had brought change whether for good or ill. But here in this unlikely gathering, 2 worlds carefully learning to exist in the same space, the change felt like a gift. Sarah looked around the table at her strange, wonderful, fractured family. They'd lost so much. Homeland, tradition, certainty. But they'd found something too. Resilience, adaptation, love that transcended boundaries. The old Sarah McKenna would never have imagined this life. But the white Apache woman she'd become wouldn't trade it for all the safety and propriety in the world. She was home, truly home, in a place between worlds where love had built a bridge strong enough to hold them all. In the distance, thunder rumbled, rain coming to break the drought at last. Sarah smiled and squeezed Standing Wolf's hand. Let the storms come. They'd weathered worse. They were survivors. All of them. And sometimes, in a world that demanded you be one thing or another, survival meant creating your own space where you could be both. Neither. Something entirely new. The desert had taken everything from her, then given her everything in return. She was Sarah McKenna. She was White Apache. She was Standing Wolf's wife and Martha's sister and Sage Mother's daughter in choice. She was burning still, not with loss or longing, but with life itself, fierce and bright as the stars overhead. She was home. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West. If you enjoyed Sarah and Standing Wolf's story, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel for more stories of love, courage, and survival in the American frontier. What did you think of Sarah's transformation? Would you have made the same choices? Share your thoughts. I read every comment and love connecting with fellow Western romance enthusiasts.